What's up, baseball fans? And of course, what's up, Mets fans? Welcome to Free Agent Frenzy 2025. It is time, guys, where everybody goes crazy. Everybody is a reporter. Everybody has breaking news and rumors and nonsense fake X accounts, but we're all ready for the offseason. And as you can see, and I don't know why it mixed it up. Give me 1 second, guys. It kind of mixed up the names here. I don't know why they did it. There we go. I think we got a good. There we go. That's right. All right. Sorry about that, guys. So let's make sure everybody who is tuning in right now there's a ton of people popping in right away on the stream. Obviously, I am talking Mets at Rob. That is CP Mets and Knicks, and that is Mets Talk with Hayden. All across the board, guys. We're gonna not just talk about the Mets. Of course, we're gonna talk about the Mets. I mean, why else are we here? But we're also gonna talk about around baseball as well, as this is an MLB free agent frenzy, and the Mets frenzy will be taking off when Cohen signs basically everybody this offseason and make Met fans extremely happy. So we just got word of Gerrit Cole and the Yankees in that weird situation. We were just talking about it prior to going live. What was that? And Hayden, I'm going to go to you first. Why would he opt out and then not agree to take or have the Yankees give that fifth year of $36 million to put that extra year on the contract that he had at the 4 years at 166 or whatever the heck it was? Why did he opt out if he wasn't going to take that fifth year option? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not really sure the whole reasoning behind it. I don't know if it was more of a big like FU to Hal Steinbrenner, or like kind of like we were discussing before the stream, like a be aware, take care of us type thing. I'll be honest, I was shocked when I read it. I had to double check the account and double check what I put on Twitter, because I thought it was some baloney, it was some fake news or whatever. But no, Gerrit Cole is back as a Yankee. I mean, it kind of seems, the two sides discuss some alternate arrangements, but maybe if they wanted more time to hammer things out. But no, he agreed on his opt-out decision, and he will stay on the Yankees roster for the next coming years and be pitching in the pinstripe. So I mean, good for the Yankees. They're bringing him back. I mean, obviously having a rotation down the line of him and Rodon, Cortez, Schmidt, Hill, and I think Stroman, as well as a ton of other prospects that they have coming up. But I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, Yankees are going to be buying a lot this offseason. We'll talk about it throughout the whole offseason. I mean, there's a lot of guys: Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, Jack Flaherty, Max Fried. There's a lot of key pitchers on the market. But when it comes to Gerrit Cole, yeah, it was something I didn't expect to see when I woke up this morning. I thought Cole was going to opt out and select free agency and try and get more money. But I don't know if it was just more of a stab in the back to Steinbrenner and Yankees, the front office. But I mean, I'm sure we'll find out more down the line. I guess just kind of unorthodox. You don't really see that very often.
Yeah. Chris, I want to get your opinion. It's a weird opt-out. Like, I mean, I don't think a lot of people thought Cole was going to opt out. And then when he did, the Yankees waited until, T-minus 5 minutes before the deadline. And then they had a decision. Obviously, they were talking for a while. But I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Because it's a very weird situation. When you see a player opt out, knowing that he probably, unless he felt that he wasn't going to get more money elsewhere, I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
No, he was definitely going to get more money elsewhere. I really do think that, he basically opted in, right? He agreed to the principle of the contract, and it's almost as if he didn't opt out. It's the same exact deal, right? 4 years, $36 million per. And I think the whole line of thinking was that, if you do that, you're going to try to get that fifth or sixth year on a contract extension, whether it's from the Yankees or whether it's from somebody else that's willing to give you that fifth or sixth year going into age like what? Like at that point, he'll be like late 30s at that point. So who in their right mind is going to pay a 38, 39-year-old, $36+ million? Well, guess what? The Mets have done it in the past. And, honestly, a couple of other teams out there probably would do that, right? Knowing that you'll lose out on that money, presumably, unless he just has some iron arm to him to get the services of these first couple of years of the deal up front. I honestly think that it was just a, like we mentioned and like we talked about before we went live here, it was just kind of a warning shot to Hal Steinbrenner and that ownership that, the Yankees have had expectations for a couple seasons now, and they fell short. This was the furthest they've gotten since they've had, set expectations when Cole was on board. And with the whole uncertainty surrounding Juan Soto, with the whole comments that we've talked about and that the Yankees have talked about, Yankees fans have talked about, with Hal Steinbrenner saying that, $300 million for a payroll isn't sustainable, you would have to imagine that a guy that is out there almost every fifth day pitching his ass off in Garrett Cole is going to be a little bit pissed off about that. And so it wouldn't shock me if it was just kind of a warning message to the Yankees organization and Hal Steinbrenner in particular saying, you better get the right pieces in here because, I want to win in a Yankees uniform. And that's something that he hasn't been able to achieve. And it's not his doing. It's not his fault, right? Guys surrounding him in the rotation, not performing. The lineup outside of like Juan Soto and Aaron Judge not performing. I mean, it's been a whole debacle over there, really. And they were fortunate, like we said, to make it as far this year as they did, because they honestly, the stars aligned for them perfectly. They should not have been in the World Series. Let's be completely honest about that. But again, that's baseball, that's sports for a reason. It's a weird situation. We'll talk about obviously the Mets and some news that we have over here for the Mets as well, but just a weird situation going on across town with the Yankees and Garrett Cole. Quite simply, I'm here for it though. Any sort of chaos that they have over there, keep it over there. The Mets run a tight ship, do everything correct. I'm I'm sure David Stearns will, and can only be focused on what's going on in this side of town in Queens. So, yep.
Yeah, exactly. When your center fielder drops the ball, your shortstop can't throw to third base, and then you try to one up everybody by not covering first base, you don't deserve to win. And they did get a great luck of the draw when it came to the ALDS and ALCS. But yeah, it is a very interesting situation with Cole. It could be just a warning sign to Hal saying, hey, listen, this was just a wake-up call and trying to scare you guys. But I don't necessarily think that's going to scare Hal. I think Hal truly believes that a $300 million isn't sustainable, which is hilarious coming from one of the richest teams, in the world that everybody knows about in Major League Baseball. And, when you make, money hand over fist and you charge the money you do for tickets, I don't think that, you should be talking about that, especially when you haven't won a World Series in 15 years and finally got back there this year when basically God handed you a silver platter to get there. I just think that it's a bad way to go about it. And I think there's a little turmoil in the Yankee country club. And we'll see where that takes them through their offseason. All right, guys. So qualifying offers are, the deadline is today to offer qualifying offers to players. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but did the Mets offer it to Pete Alonso? I'm hearing like mixed rumors. They did, right?
They did.
Okay. Because I saw different reports, but all right, that's good. So the qualifying offers are out, ready to go. I don't even know. Pete Alonso declined it too. I think I saw that rumor too. I
don't think he declined it just yet, but the expectation obviously is that him and Manai are going to decline it. I mean, it's pretty much a given.
Yes. So there's a ton of qualifying offers going around. I do wonder, if Severino is a guy that would decline a qualifying offer, depending on what they see. And again, they got until November 19th to accept that qualifying offer. And there's a lot of time to do that. Obviously, they're going to start talking to other teams, see if they can get multi-year deals. And obviously, if they don't see what they like, they'll just, take that qualifying offer of $21.05 million, which is the qualifying offer total right now. So, Chris, what do you think about these qualifying offers? To obviously a couple of the Mets and specifically Pete Alonso, who's looking for a big time deal. Do you think every one of the former Mets are going to decline a qualifying offer? Or do you think one or maybe all or none are going to accept that qualifying offer going forward?
Well, first of all, before I answer your question, I see here from SNY Mets, as it relates to the Mets coaching staff, all of them will be returning per David Stearns. So if there was any questions about any sort of hitting coaching, shakeups with Jeremy Barnes and Eric Chavez, like I thought there was going to be. That's not happening. So there you have it from David Stearns himself. All of the coaches are going to be that were a part of the team in 2024 will be there in 2025. For better, for worse, I guess we'll see. In relation to your question, Rob, as I keep looking down to, I'm not paying attention to everybody on the screen. I'm refreshing updates from Passon, from SNY, etc. So bear with me. This is the whole fun in the free agent frenzy. But I really think the only realistic option in terms of who received the qualifying offer and in terms of who is would be willing to accept it would be Luis Severino, which is why my channel right now, in my live chat, I have the poll. Do you think Luis Severino takes it or not? And Luis Severino, obviously, I've talked about him and I've talked about all the other, impending internal free agents that the Mets have across the board in terms of would I be willing to bring them back versus not? And the answer for me in terms of Severino, right, as far as Severino goes, is for the right price. There is undoubtedly maybe a few teams out there that will offer him a 3 or 4 year deal. I think a 3-year deal for Sevy would be fair. It's not going to come to the tune of anywhere close to $21 million, though, right? At least I don't think, right? He got a $13 million deal, and he performed reasonably well for a season. The injury history still remains, although he remained relatively healthy in 2024. So how much AAV are you adding on top of that $13 million that he, earned in 2024? I don't think it reaches quite up to, 20 million, although I could be wrong, right? Some team could surprise us and, maybe they saw something they really like with Severino, his fastball sweeper combination, etc. But, it's a question of, does he want to go through another prove-it year deal? Alonso's not doing that. John Manaea, with the way that he performed, and especially being a lefty, certainly isn't doing that. So those guys are off the table. But by the way, if Pete Alonso's watching this, I triple dog dare you to take the qualifying offer. If you truly wanted to remain a New York Met, right? I'm just kidding. Obviously, he's not going to do it. But it's kind of a case in point, right? A case by case scenario. Sevy has until November 19th, about 2 weeks, to decide whether he wants to take it or not. I'm sure he's going to gauge the market. So is his agent in terms of what teams are willing to offer. And you know what, though? Taking a 1 year, $21 million prove-it deal again wouldn't be terrible for him, because you sort of saw him fizzle out a little bit as the innings got increasing throughout the season. It's a dangerous game to play for any guy that has proved himself for 1 year. But again, I think the answer is still no. I would not expect Luis Severino to take it. But of the guys that got offered QOs, obviously he would be the one to potentially think about it. But if you're expecting him to take it, I will say, just don't get your hopes up. That's kind of the line of thinking that I'm kind of going through right now as it relates to Luis Severino.
Yeah, when it comes to the qualifying offers and stuff like that, I always look at the number because I'm always curious. If Severino takes that number, it's an $8 million pay raise than he got for the Mets last season, right? That's something that, could he get that on the free agent market on a multi-year deal? Maybe, right? It depends on who goes after him, right? Even the Mets, for example. But it is going to be very interesting to see who actually takes it, because if he doesn't, we'll see what the Mets have to do. But, if Sean Manaea, which probably won't, or say Severino does take it, well, that's one less guy in your rotation you have to worry about, and that might change the plans of David Stearns. And speaking of David Stearns, before I get to you, Hayden, they asked a question about having a horse at the front end of your rotation always helps. I'm asked about an ace, and he says having a horse at the front end of your rotation always helps. I think Sean Manaea served that this year along with Severino at times this year. So he knows an ace is important, right? He knows this, right? He was with the Astros at some point. David Stearns, he's seen what an ace can do. He was with the Brewers. The Brewers basically always had an ace, right? He knows how important an ace is. I don't know how many people consider Kodai Senga an ace, where he can be a guy that can be counted on every fifth day. He was injured for the majority of this year. So it is interesting to see what David Stearns quote and little hints that he's given throughout the offseason already about, spending big, financial flexibility, the Juan Soto situation, now about ace scenario and all that. Chris, you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just saying, like, just so I follow up with it. I think as Mets fans, right, if we're talking about the QOs, right, I mean, I think that it would be a perfect scenario for the Mets, right? They're hoping he takes it because you'd much rather that, obviously, than having to, increase the risk of paying him a 3 or 4 year deal to retain him, which they might just pass up on and let him go elsewhere. Like, even if it is an $8 to $9 million increase in salary, like you just said, which it is, which might be the enticing thing for him to take, right? If he believes in himself, that's just less risk. And I would much rather him take that and have that $21 million tied up for 1 year than having to spread it out. So I just wanted to say that. It's an obvious, but I think it's needed to be said.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hayden, let me get your thoughts on the Mets qualifying offers. Do you think anybody's going to take it? Especially when it's at $21.05 million. So, it's a guy for like Pete Alonso who's making basically close to that. It's not really a big raise to him. He's expecting between 25 and 30, but a guy like Manaea and Severino that are getting a $7-8 million increase. Do you think any of those guys are going to take it?
Yeah, I mean, first I just wanted to touch up, I agree with everything what Chris said. One little thing I just wanted to mention was, David Stern's discussions of bringing back the Mets coaching staff. That's pretty shocking. You guys know me all season. I complained about a coach in particular, so kind of shocking. I really thought David Stearns, was going to go out there and want to bring in one of his own guys, but maybe he has a good rapport. So like I said, I don't know, but when it comes down to the qualifying offers, Severino, Manaea, and Pete. Obviously Pete. I no shot, not in a million years he accepts that qualifying offer. He's a guy who wants to go out there, test the market. There's really even no discussions of Pete. Manaea, once again, like Chris said, lefty arm. He's capable. We've seen what Manaea is capable of doing. I think he's a guy who's going to want to go out there, get more money from the market, get a multi-year deal. He's a guy who can go out there and get 15, 20, 23 million, arguably, AAV potentially. So, Manaea is going to want to go out there, test the market 100%. Severino, I agree. I think if there were to be anyone to accept the qualifying offer, it's going to be him. Severino's in a particularly interesting spot where it was a little shaky this year. He had his ups, he's had his downs. We've really never seen Severino be a consistent pitcher and pitch all season since 2018. It was 6-7 years ago, just about. When it comes to Luis Severino, does he want to go out there and have another prove it year? And arguably, I think most teams may be a little reluctant to do that. I don't know if the Mets are reluctant to do that. But Luis Severino, like we said, he's 30 years old. Is he going to want, our team's comfortable going out there, giving him this. When it comes to Severino, I don't think he gets a short-term deal. I think he's going to probably want a 4 or 5 year deal. He's 30 years old. So, like we said, I think that's a adequate timetable right there. Let me ask you guys this, and my apologies, I'm not cognizant on this fully. The qualifying offer, is it the same price as last year?
No, it's I think it was about $2 million. I think it was 19 and a half, I think, last year.
So they raised it? Okay.
So it's about $2 million almost. Yeah.
So I'll say this. Out of the 3 pitchers that we have leaving or going to the market in Manaea, Quintana, and Sevy, if there's one guy I'm bringing back, it's Manaea. Lefty arm, I value a high lefty presence in a rotation. He was the most consistent guy really this season. Really from day one to the final game of the NLCS. He was the most consistent guy out there. I think Manaea is the guy you would really essentially have to bring back. I agree with the concept of you need an ace. I think that's something that the Mets have. For the last 2 years, it's been kind of interesting to see the Mets not have an ace because we've always looked at the Mets and said, oh, Jacob deGrom. And you go back in the day, Matt Harvey, Noah Syndergaard. But now you go to that new level, and it's kind of David Stern's front office. Does he want an ace? And he said, he viewed Manaea as an ace, and I think it's important. I think it's imperative that the Mets do go out there and get a high caliber level pitcher. whether that's a Corbin Burns, whether that is whoever it is. I think bringing back Manaea would be a smart move. I think, like we said, we know David Stearns. He's a guy who's a small market GM. And now you give him essentially a blank check to give to anyone. And I think that's a good thing. I think, last offseason, when the Mets signed Luis Severino, everyone was going nuts. When we signed Manaea, everyone was like, no one thought of it. And I guarantee you a lot of the moves that are going to be made this offseason are going to be moves that Mets fans are not going to think much of. And they're going to be very big last year. Yeah, sure, some moves didn't work out. Joey Wendell didn't work out, whatever. Phil Maton's kind of an interesting story. It's a bittersweet moment, I guess, with him. But overall, when I think it comes down to it, I think if there's anyone that is going to accept the qualifying offer, it's Severino. If there's anyone that I would want to bring back, it's Manaea. But I think it's going to be on a long-term, multi-year deal.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Can I just say this real quick? I completely forgot to mention this, which is a great point that Hayden brought up and Phil Maton. I am so proud of David Stearns and the New York Mets not buying into the whole hype of what he did in the regular season, but realizing that he crapped the bed in the playoffs for the Mets and he pitched to the tune of an 8.44 ERA and they declined his option. Listen, Rob, I know you're a big Phil Maton guy. I know that you kind of wanted to see him back. I'm going to go on the opposite, side of this argument here and say David Stearns is remaining true to what he instilled in this Mets organization going back to last offseason and going back to the early points of 2024. If you don't produce, right, when this team needs you to produce, in the moments that you're expected to produce, you are out of here. That's not to say they can't re-sign Phil Maton because obviously it's fair game. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. It'll be less most likely than that $7.75 million option that they just declined. But good on them for holding true because the bullpen and the routes they can take with this bullpen, so many different routes. I dropped a video on that on my channel a couple hours ago. If you guys haven't watched that as well, links in my description down below as well. But again, I just want to throw that out there, Phil Maton. You're free to disagree with me, Rob.
Well, just because they declined the option doesn't mean they're not going to bring him back on a 1 year, $2 million deal.
I agree. I agree. He's not worth 7.75 though.
Hey, no, but I don't see Maton as an eighth inning guy. He's going to be that fifth, sixth inning guy.
I think when it comes to Phil Maton, the way you got to look at this, and this is essentially any philosophy for sports or baseball, is you could have a really good postseason and a bad regular season. People only going to remember that postseason. I mean, look at Pete Alonso.
Of course.
I mean, he was a dude who myself and probably 75% of Mets fans were ready to sign off on in July. I mean, abysmal year. And then he came into this postseason and essentially clinched a wild card spot because of them. Moved, to the NLCS because of him, essentially. He was a big aspect to that. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Phil Maton, I kind of view it that way. He had his ups and downs in the regular season, more positive than not, but in the postseason when it mattered most and you can't come in the big game, and that kind of sticks with me. And that's why, to be honest, and I applaud the Mets. I applaud David Stearns for not bringing back Phil Maton. That was a kind of expected move. I was under the impression of I didn't think they'd want to bring him back.
Not for that money. Not for that much.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't think anyone.
Well, the difference they can use, the difference they can use now would basically guarantee them at least a year of service, right? For some of these guys that are on the market, a higher leverage guy, right? And that difference, I don't care if Phil Maton comes back. I'd prefer not to see it, but listen, you bring him back on a 2 year, or a 1 year, $2 million deal, $3 million even, right? The same thing with Ryan Stanek. These guys can be used as decent arms to give you innings, but the high leverage situations for Phil Maton, that's way past his service prime already. And, in this crucial situations, he proved to be non-effective in the playoffs. And I get that it's recency bias, and I always try to get away from the recency bias. I'm not taking anything away that he had, right, and had done for the Mets in the regular season. But again, what do we talk about? What do we talk about on our episode, on our last Hot Stove episode, Rob? The primary goal of this offseason and everything we're talking about is trying to get to a point where this team is better than the Dodgers. And listen, if you have Maton coming in against the Dodgers in 2025 in a crucial playoff series, you're in trouble. And that history has already shown itself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Maton could be the Adamant Vino of 2024, right? We do have 162 games to play, right? You're not always going to see, your high leverage guys in every single game. Those second tier guys play a role as much as we might not want to see them. They play a role in a 162 game season. Now, they might not pitch much, if at all, in the postseason, but they're important when you get to a 162 game season, especially if you're going to get guys coming back from injury, guys that might, if the Mets go out on Blake Snell, guess what? We're going to be using a lot of bullpen arms, to get to a Blake Snell start because he's a 5-inning pitcher. There's a lot of aspects of, getting guys like a Phil Maton, keeping guys like Phil Maton, that can fill a role in a 162 game season. It's going to be very interesting to see that, how Stearns plays it out. But he already made another move. He claimed right-handed pitcher Kevin Herget off waivers from the Brewers, another guy that he knows well, right? I checked. Yeah, he didn't draft him. I'm sorry, he drafted him, and he knows him throughout the system. So this is another guy. He had 11 and a third innings in the big leagues. He had a 1.59 ERA, 2.27 ERA, and 47 and 2/3 innings in AAA. So this is the guy that he doesn't throw very hard either. He throws like a 93 to 95. But he has a nice cutter. He has a nice slider. He has multiple pitches. Again, another failed starter that's a reliever, but he had very, very good numbers in very minimal innings in the major leagues, but was very good in 47 innings. That's basically a season at a 2.27 ERA. So these are another one of these guys that we talk about with Stearns in the depth, right? This guy, David Stearns, knows how to put a bullpen together. We still don't know how Stearns can put a bullpen together when they stay healthy, right? There was a lot of injuries when the Mets bullpen, so it's hard to judge Stearns when he couldn't do anything during the season except bring guys up through the farm or through the minor leagues when guys got hurt because you were way too early before the trade deadline and he couldn't really make a move. When he was able to, he got Phil Maton very early. And, you see he did that there. And Phil Maton was a big reason why the Mets did what they did during the season because he was very good during the season. He just was a debacle in the playoffs. And then obviously you saw what we did with Stanek and all that other thing. So Kevin Herget, another one of those guys that, nobody will talk about, but could be a big proponent this offseason or this season coming forward, could be the next Reed Garrett, right? And these are depth moves that you just never know what can get done, what can happen during the season.
But on the Phil Maton, no, I agree with you in terms of the recent acquisition here that you just talked about. Just as we were speaking about Phil Maton, SNY posted a clip of David Stearns saying, David Stearns says declining Phil Maton's option had to do with, quote unquote, keeping options open a little bit. And then he said, I talked to Phil, expressed interest in keeping in touch. I think he feels the same way. So that's a little bit of context on what David Stearns just said in his interview with the media about Phil Maton and the declining of that option.
Yeah, see, there you go. Like, I think it's just financial flexibility. I know the Mets have a ton of money coming off the payroll, but you also got to be, smart. That $7 million could save you $5 million if you sign Maton for $1 million, $2 million deal for 1 year. That $5 million can go to another bullpen arm. Like, that's something that Stearns is very aware of, as he was very hamstrung with the financial situation when it came to the Brewers. So even though he's not really hamstrung here, you always want to save $1 or $2. You never know what you can use that $1 million or $5 million to another, another player. So it's going to be very interesting what Stearns does. And, to see him work with all that money he has available is going to be very interesting. When it comes to the qualifying offers, guys, I just want to name the guys that got the qualifying offers: Bregman, Burns, Fried, Hernandez, Teoscar Hernandez, Minaya, Santander, Soto, and that's basically it, right? I think it was Severino as well. I don't think they put that up there, but likely, guys, Pete Alonso, Willie Adames, and all that. So I think all of them are going to decline it, except probably maybe Severino. We'll see. But
there's no harm in offering a qualifying offer, though, because if I'm not mistaken, right, even if they choose to go somewhere else, you get draft pick compensation from it anyway. So
correct. Yeah. So there's no look unless you're a team like the Brewers or, the lower tier teams, the teams that don't like to spend a lot of money, they don't want to spend $1 million on a guy that, for 1 year. They don't like doing that. So if it's a team like that doesn't want to do that, yeah, they like the draft picks, but unless they 100% know this guy is looking for a multi-year deal on a big contract, then they will offer it. So again, it's beneficial for the team, and sometimes it's benefit. That's why it's a qualifying offer is great, because it can benefit both sides, right? If the player doesn't like the offers he's getting, he can always go back to that qualifying offer before the 19th of November and take that, nice little payday. And the team is only stuck on the book for 1 year. So it's a win-win situation most of the time for teams and players. So next we're going to talk about the Atlanta Braves. Obviously one of the Mets rivals in the NL East. They've been talking. I've been watching a lot of or listening to and looking at a lot of X accounts with the Braves, and they're talking about shedding payroll, right? They're bringing back what's his name? I forgot the name. The right hand Ozuna. Sorry, there you go. Ozuna. They're bringing him back. They picked up the option there, but they declined an option on Travis d'Arnaud with the $8 million, which is very. I mean, they got Murphy, so I understand why they would do that. I mean, why pay $8 million for a backup catcher? It's a lot of money for a backup catcher. But hearing that the Braves are trying to shed payroll, right? I don't think they're bringing back Max Fried, but I have a feeling what they're gonna do is gonna get a couple of guys like a Chris Sale situation. Try to get a guy like on a 2-year deal, of $25 to $30 million, or somebody on a 1-year deal. You can look at the Kikuchis of the world, the Buellers of the world. Maybe even, one of the Mets pitchers, the Severinos, is the Manaea, something that's not going to cost them $100+ million for a pitcher. I think they're going to go on to that area where they're not going to have a tremendous amount of years and money, but are still going to actually sign those guys. And I think the Braves are going to be active in the free agent market, but for a lot less money in years, as the guys that I just brought up. So, Chris, I want to get your thoughts on that with the Braves, like declining the $8 million option on d'Arnaud. They got Murphy, so that's understandable. As good as Travis d'Arnaud is, $8 million for a backup catcher is crazy when you're trying to allocate money elsewhere and trying to save some payroll flexibility for other moves, because they're going to lose out on Max Fried. He's not going back to the Braves. I'd be shocked if he does. So what are your thoughts on that when it comes to the Braves?
I mean, it just means that there's something up their sleeve, right? There's something's going to happen. I mean, they've been clearing money. Alex Anthopoulos has been pretty adamant that the payroll is going to continue to rise little by little. And, this is a team that really in the past hasn't needed to go out there and make any sort of blockbuster free agent signings. They've been doing it all internally, right? In terms of giving out contract extensions, to the likes of Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris Jr., or Michael Harris III, excuse me, and their pitching staff as well. They've just been extending. And, the trades or the acquisitions that they do make has usually been via trade, right? They haven't really maybe outside of like a Duvall or something like that. I can't really remember like the last free agent, splash that they made. So maybe that's what's up their sleeve, this coming off season. I mean, they always have something working, man, whether it's being a step ahead in terms of the next move in the trade market, or whether they're finally prepared to offer a mega contract out to somebody. I don't even want to say the name Juan Soto, but again, I'd have to do the numbers on their payroll. It just seems like there's some sort of scheme that, their front office is working up to try to, mitigate the money on the books in order to clear up that space, like you just said. And, in terms of expecting them to stay just like pat and just like accept that they didn't get into the playoffs last season, that's a very, very not great way of looking at it, because this team is hungry, right? They were obviously injury riddled last season, and they saw, a playoff berth even still, which is pretty impressive in its own right. But they had championship caliber aspirations. They fell short, and they want to get back to it. And so, all of that just signifies to me that they're clearing up roster space for taking on a big contract via trade, or going out there and just offering it to somebody on the free agent market. And I would expect nothing less of it. It's just, who's the name? Who are they targeting? We'll never know until it happens. And it will happen out of nowhere. Trust me, it'll happen out of nowhere.
Yeah, and that was the first thing I was thinking when I see them not declining options on certain players to save money here or there. The first thing I thought of, like, this freaking team's gonna make a big trade. Like, if it's for a pitcher or it's for I don't think it's gonna be for a position player because I think they're kind of set for the most part there. But I think it's gonna be for a starting pitcher. Like, watch out, Garrett Crochet. I think that's an option for them. I have
Luis
a
Castillo from the Mariners, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, I think they're gonna make one of those trades. Actually, I was I was listening to Atlanta radio the last couple of days because I was just curious what they were thinking, and a lot of people were bringing up Luis Castillo, like you just said, Chris, and a lot of people were bringing up Crochet. And the Braves have a ton of prospects. They have, they find a way to make it work. And Crochet is not, he's not making a lot of money right now. He's still got a couple of years on his deal, and that's perfect for the Braves because they don't have to pay him $25-30 million like they would have to do a Burns, a Freed, guys like that, or Snell. So, Hayden, what are your thoughts on the Atlanta Braves declining the option on d'Arnaud? And are you think they're planning something big here?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's business. At the end of the day, like we said, and I fully concur with it. I mean, paying that much money for a backup catcher is a little insane. I mean, you already have Sean Murphy on a big contract. He's your everyday catcher going out there every day. Yeah, I know they kind of platoon Murphy and d'Arnaud, more so with the aspect of catcher / DH. But yeah, like I said, I mean, declining $8 million, Travis d'Arnaud. I guess they're not open to bringing him back. Like I said, they want payroll flexibility, it seems. So I guess it seems like, something is up their sleeve. And, you kind of worded it very well. They're a team that works very well internally in-house with their farm system, with their AAA team. Alex Anthopoulos, I believe that's his name, right? The GM, very intelligent, very good GM. I would argue he's, a top-tier GM in Major League Baseball, as much as, Mets fans probably don't like to say it. He's a very good GM. I mean, that, you look at that whole Braves team, and essentially that whole team is locked up for the next 6, 7, 8 years. So, they're doing something right over there. So if you're a Braves fan, you trust their front office. That something probably is up their sleeves, whether it's a, front end of the rotation ace or a nice big bat. I do think something is in the works for the Braves. I think they're a team that, struggled unfortunately last year due to the injuries. Obviously, Acuna, Albies, a lot of guys were out or just couldn't play up to par due to the fact that they were injured. But yeah, like I said, I don't really see any world where the Mets and Travis d'Arnaud have a reunification. He's 35 years old. I mean, I don't really see it. Like I said, there are some people who are questioning and doubting Alvarez's abilities down the line, which, I think that's a little arbitrary. The dude's, 22, 23 years old. I mean, you got to give him a break. He played all season banged up and hurt. I mean, like I said, if, maybe the Mets could get d'Arnaud back on the right price, a team-friendly deal as a backup catcher, a little DH, probably a 1-2 year deal, if anything. 2 years, maybe an opt-out in between is probably the most feasible thing I would say anyone could see. But, yeah, Travis d'Arnaud, opt-out, kind of surprised, but I guess the Braves have something in the works.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question for you all. And I'm sorry, because I'm getting sick of this Braves talk. I know we're talking about the Braves. I don't give a damn about the Braves. I'm sorry. They're going to make a move, and I'm going to hate them for it. Anyways, what's new? I was responding to George's comment in my live chat on my channel, and it kind of just brought up a point for me, like with the whole Maton conversation. George was asking whether the Mets have any sort of bullpen names coming up through the ranks that could make their way up in the Mets organization, on the major league field in 2025. And I was just like, well, I can't really name any pure bullpen arms, but any of their starters, right, can go ahead and appear in the bullpen. So if you have David Stearns talking about, keeping options open, Do we think that any of the starters, right, might make their way up as debuts in terms of just slowly easing them into the Mets organization at the MLB level as bullpen pieces? Like, that would be the time to do it instead of giving them a solidified rotation spot. What do you all think about that? I just like a light bulb went off in my head, honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, Jose Butto, there's one, right? I mean, there's one right there, right? If they believe
Tyler
that,
McGill.
yeah, exactly, right? He's probably, that's another
Peterson.
guy that can be talking. Yeah, what about Vasil, right? They don't believe, he's starting to not really perform well when he gets higher up in the levels. Maybe that's a guy that you can transition into a bullpen piece, a bullpen arm going forward, right?
Well, I think one interesting thing that you could look at, and obviously you have David Stearns, when he was, and I said this a lot, I'm going to repeat it. When you look at how David Stearns managed that Milwaukee Brewers player development, Burns and Woodruff are two guys that really stand out. He brought them up in the bullpen, let them develop, get innings, get a hang of it, and then he let them get into the rotation. So they had, I don't want to say he babied them, but he kind of did the philosophy that most GMs do now. Is letting them start on a short leash and then kind of letting them go out longer. So we saw it this year with Jose Butto. We saw it a couple of years with Tyler McGill, but that was just more in result of injury. But I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Vasil, or any other AAA guys this year who
is who I was thinking of, and maybe even Christian Scott, right? I mean, you can put him in the bullpen.
And Scott coming back from injury, it doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah, Nunez, the same thing, right? He was signed internationally as a starter. He started early on, in the rookie league, and then into Double-A, and then they developed him into a bullpen arm because they felt like that he couldn't throw the amount of innings and be successful, and they basically made him to a bullpen arm in the minor leagues. And we see how successful he was with the Mets before he got injured. So there's a lot of moving parts with that. We just have to wait and see. It's going to be interesting because, look, the one thing I trust with Stearns is bullpen, right? I can't tell you that David Stearns, starting pitching wise, is going to go out and spend a ton of money. I can't tell you that he's going to spend a ton of money on position players. Why? Because it hasn't been proven yet. What I know is that David Stearns, with money or not, can put a bullpen together. That's what I know because I've seen him do it successfully in Milwaukee for many, many years. They were always top 3 in bullpen ERA every single year. And if you want to throw pitching as a whole, they were in the top 5 every single year when he was the GM. So I'm not worried about the bullpen side with David Stearns, even though we might not like some moves and we might like some moves. I think David Stearns is a guy that you just have to trust when it comes to the bullpen because he's been very successful doing it over the course of his tenure as GM with the Brewers. And with money this time and his smarts, why wouldn't you think he can't do it with the bullpen? And if he doesn't do it, we'll kill him for it, just like we do with everybody who is the GM for the New York Mets, right? We get on everybody here, right? We're not afraid to do it, right? It's what we do, right? We love to kill people when they're not doing their jobs. That's the best part about being a YouTuber is, bitching and complaining. That's what we do, right? It's the fun part, right? It pisses people off, but it's a fact, right? You got to call people out when they're not doing their job. All right, so Juan Soto, right? We all know Juan Soto, the number 1 free agent. Everybody knows about it, right? We heard the Cubs, we heard the Phillies, the Blue Jays, the Mets, the Yankees, name another team, right? Is there a surprise team, right? There's always that surprise team. It's Boris, right? Boris will talk about, the Yomiuri Giants probably trying to sign Juan Soto if he can get more money for his player. I don't think Cohen's going to be outbid. I don't. But I also think that there's going to be teams close enough to the Mets' biggest bid where if Juan Soto, and this is particular to the Yankees here, and, Hayden, I'll start with you. If Juan Soto gets the highest offer from the Mets, but the Yankees come close, let me throw out a number here, right? I put it on my free agent predictions. Say 12 years, $660 million. That's the Mets offer. But the Yankees come in with 12 years, $630. Is he going to take that extra $20 million overall and go to the Mets, right? Boris had a terrible year as a agent with a lot of guys not getting what he thought they were going to get. This is his time to redeem himself. And the way Soto has been talking, even right after they lost the World Series, he was talking about everybody has a chance. Every team has the same chance as every other team. What do you think overall, do you think Juan Soto is going to the highest bidder, or will he take less money to go to the team that he currently was on in the New York Yankees, or somebody else that he might feel more comfortable with?
I think if you look at it with Soto, he's right. You know, every team is in contention. I mean, maybe not the Athletics or Rays or obviously, but you know, plenty of teams are going to give offers. You know, I think if you're a GM, you're a front office of a baseball organization, I think you'd be dumb not to throw out an offer. It doesn't hurt. You know, obviously, yeah, some offers are more serious. You know, I'm sure teams like the Mets, the Giants, the Dodgers, the Yankees, you know, the high market spenders are the teams that are going to have serious bids. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure probably 20, 15 organizations are going to throw a contract at him. Like we said, some are probably going to get looked at and laughed and thrown in the other room. And then, you know, there's going to be a selective 5 or 4 or 6 of them that are kind of well kept. I agree with you. I think Steve Cohen it's probably going to come down to New York. It's going to come down to Cohen and Steinbrenner. And it's going to be a bidding war. I think it's going to be this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think if you look at it, I think Soto wants the most money. I don't think location is going to be a big issue for him. Maybe a few, you know, San Fran. I know some players have not crazy about playing there in the past, but I think when it comes to New York, I really think that's going to be the only indifference where money isn't a matter. I mean, you know, you look at the Yankees, they're a successful team guaranteed to make the postseason every year. How far they get, well, that's up to them in October. You know, sure he enjoyed, you know, playing next to Aaron Judge, you know, whole season and postseason. And, you know, obviously the same could be with the Mets next year. I think right now it's going to be the battle in New York, essentially. It's going to come down to the 2 richest and most intelligent owners in baseball. I think the Dodgers could be that kind of third team kind of, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out to throw a contract, defer all the money, which I don't think the Mets or Yankees are going to do that, any of that type of Shohei where it's, you know, 20 million from here to there. And then the big bulk of the contract from down the line. I think he's going to get his guaranteed money in those years that he's tenured. But right now, like I said, it's going to be Mets Yankees battle. And I'll tell you this, I think the Yankees have a little bit of a soft spot just because they played in the World Series, just because they got farther than the Mets, just because he has a rapport with the Yankees, right? He worked with them this whole season. Yeah, I'm sure he's friendly with some of the guys in the Mets, sure, but I think the Yankees have the upper hand. So I think Cohen is going to have to outbid him. To answer your question, yeah, even if it's 5, 10, 20, 30 million extra, I do think the Mets are going to have to outbid the Yankees in order to get Soto. Any other team like the Giants, Dodgers, I think it's irrelevant. But when it's Mets, Yankees, Cohen's going to need to outbid.
Chris, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, listen, Juan Soto is the Mets, you know, signing to lose. He is the Mets' to lose at this point. Hal Steinbrenner is not going toe-to-toe with Steve Cohen. I'm just going to tell you this right now. And we alluded to this in our last episode of the Mets Hot Stove Live, right? I mean, they have a bunch of holes like the Mets do as well, right? But when you take into account what they were like saying and, you know, the free agents and this whole Garrett Cole debacle that they have going on, right? I mean, you know, I don't know. I just don't see a world where they have a bunch of different needs and they're going to allocate, you know, 50 million or whatever it is to Juan Soto alone, given that. And the Mets, again, right? Like, they're not handcuffed with the position that they're in to get Juan Soto and stop there, right? That's not the case with the Mets. I know a lot of Mets fans want to make it out to be that way, but it's simply not. In terms of like the original question that you had in terms of Juan Soto, I kind of agree with Marcus in the chat. I was literally just going to say that after Hayden was done talking, and I was going to agree with him. I was like, the only other surprise team that I can really think of is maybe the Red Sox would go in there and like swoop them up and kind of like an FU to the Yankees. But like, they've got the money to do it in terms of the payroll that they have going into the 2025 season. You know, systematically, I don't really know exactly where he fits into that team. I don't really watch much Red Sox baseball, but in terms of a team that aligns with presumably what Juan Soto wants, because I'm just going to, make the guess that he doesn't want to go back to the West Coast with some things that we've heard. So maybe he's, you see all these players want to go to the West Coast. They prefer the West Coast. And, some guys want to stay on the East Coast. And I think Juan Soto is one of those guys. If he wants to go to the West Coast or it doesn't really make a difference to him, then you start talking about like, obviously, the Giants and then the Dodgers and whatever may have you. But I think that in terms of East Coast teams, the teams that are, have the flexibility to extend this type of contract, you're talking about the Yankees, talking about the Mets and maybe the Red Sox. And the Blue Jays too, but are we really are the Blue Jays a serious contender? I know people want to make them out to be because they got the money. Come on, miss me with that. I don't think that they're actually a serious player for Juan Soto. I mean, I could be wrong. I think
I think
I could be wrong, but I don't think so.
One thing with Soto that I would say, and and I think it kind of sticks to how the Mets free agency and front office has been the last 4 or 5 years. Is, in my opinion, the Mets have always come short when it comes to getting the big guy.
Agree.
Whether it was Ohtani, whether it was back then Bauer, whoever it was, this is the time to really for really Steve Cohen to go out there and give a big FU to MLB. We know that the Mets are cutting payroll tremendously this offseason. What is it, 150 something million? And we know that the Mets, erratic spending hasn't really panned out the last couple of years. Obviously, that was irresponsible spending, obviously, with Scherzer and Verlander. And, we all know that. I don't need to educate everyone on that. But when it comes to Soto, he's 26 years old. He's a guy who you really shouldn't have any worry about whether he'll be a good player or not. I think it's guaranteed he'll be a good player for the next 7-8 years, guaranteed. Raw talent that doesn't grow on trees like that.
Yeah.
Great player. He's a leader. If I'm the Mets, you got to get the job done. I mean, even if you lose Pete, I think that's something. If I'll say this: I'm willing to lose Pete if it means Soto coming in. But if you lose Pete and you don't get Soto, it's kind of like a weird feeling. So
you can still be successful, though. You can still be successful even if those things happen.
That was the thing we were talking about with the Mets, with the difference between the Mets and the Yankees getting Juan Soto, right? If the Yankees lose out on Juan Soto, that's such a huge loss that can they really make up all that ground with other guys? I don't know if they can. That's a huge loss. The Mets aren't going to cry in the corner if they lose out on Juan Soto. Even if they lose out on Pete Alonso, right? You can sign Christian Walker and Anthony Santander and Corbin Burns, and that's a very successful offseason considering, right? That's pretty good. I think a lot of us would take that, right? So I know some Met fans will cry in the corner, Pete Alonso's gone, but overall, that's a solid offseason. And you betted your team in every area that had a hole. You got your ace. You got a first baseman that has good numbers. You got a right fielder that's basically on the verge of an MVP caliber guy. It's not Juan Soto, but it's pretty damn good. It's a pretty good offseason. So I do wonder about that, but I do think Juan Soto is going to be an East Coast guy. Wherever the East Coast team you want to pick, minus the Marlins and the Braves probably. I think all the East Coast teams are in play, to be quite honest with you.
Can I say something? And we've seen it on our live stream before, right? Our past live stream, and we're seeing it now. Where is this Juan Soto is not a winner talk coming from? Where is this coming from?
I don't know.
I don't know where it's coming from. And I'm just sitting here and trying to comprehend, do we just forget about how he single-handedly almost took that abysmal Nationals team to the World Series and basically won it for them with his playoff performances and his World Series performances at the young age of whatever he was at? He's still only 26 years old. What are we talking about? He's not a winner. Where is this coming from? And the fact that he's going to come in here and mess up the Mets chemistry, how? Are we thinking of before we're saying something here? I don't understand it. And again, people are entitled to their opinions. I get it and I respect it. I honestly respect it. If you're coming to this stream with that mindset, I get it. Stay consistent, but I get it. But I just can't rationalize to myself where we're coming from with that angle. I mean, right? I mean, Ken the other day, I believe it was, I'm not sure who was in the live chat, but someone said that Harper's a winner and Soto isn't.
It was Ken.
What is Harper won? What is Harper won?
See, that's the thing that always annoys me, right? But this is the Met fans having that Wilpon like syndrome. They have that situation. They have that Jason Bay syndrome, right? They think every big contract is going to become a disaster, and Met fans should just turn to Francisco Lindor. As many Met fans destroyed Lindor, big contract, this and that. Guess what, guys? Now everybody loves Lindor, right? You're all singing that song together every time he comes to the plate, right? You got to remember, guys, stop losing. Stop being a loser when it comes to stuff like that, right? You can't be afraid of these contracts. If you're going to be afraid of these contracts, you'll never be the Dodgers. You'll never be the Yankees continuing to make the playoffs every year. Because if you make the playoffs every year, there's a shot that you can get to the World Series and a shot to win it.
I mean, look at Dodgers. Look at that Dodgers team. I mean, you look at January. They gave Shohei Ohtani $700 million. And everyone went out there, including myself, and I said, that's going to be a horrible contract if Ohtani doesn't win a single World Series with that Dodgers team. And year one, he did it.
On deferred money.
I could give a crap how much money Lindor gets. You can give him the world. You can give him $1 billion with Juan Soto. They win a World Series, I'm fine with it. I mean, look at it. World Series are huge. The Mets are, hate to say it, the Mets have a little bit of a drought going on. 1986, 2024, do the math. You see how the 86 Mets are treated. They're like legends. They're icons. I mean, they view them like gods. So it goes to show, get the job.
Ken is cracking me up in the chat. Ken is cracking me up in the chat. Ken, you literally said it in the live stream. I mean, your name is literally right on here. I mean, everyone knows that you said it. Rob knows you said it. Everyone knows that you said it. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. To Edgardo in the chat too, it's saying that Soto's a wannabe leader. And listen, Ken, I appreciate your perspective. I apologize. Anyways, listen, you said it, but you got to stick to it. Just like we've been sticking to the Pete Alonso conversation, Rob and myself here. We come on here every day talking about Pete Alonso, and you're here talking with us about Pete Alonso, and you've disagreed with us on Pete Alonso. Anyways, okay, sorry, but you said it, and I don't know where that's coming from because Harper's not a winner. And also, with Edgardo in the chat, what is this wannabe leader? Like, what is the definition of a wannabe leader that Juan Soto supposedly is? Like, right? I don't understand this. See, I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand it. And if you can explain it in an efficient manner, then maybe I'll believe it. But for right now, I don't believe it.
Aaron Judge is a wannabe leader. Right? Bryce Harper is a wannabe leader, right? Two guys that won MVPs and one left their team, and they won the following year a World Series when Harper left. And that was with Juan Soto on the team at 19 years old. Aaron Judge, MVP, best player in baseball, can't get out of his own way in the playoffs, can carry his own team. You can't consider him a winner. Yankee fans are questioning it now. Have you listened to sports? Ken, you listen to Sports Talk Radio just as much as I have in New York. The Yankee fans are saying what they're saying about Aaron Judge, right? It doesn't matter what he does during the season anymore. It's not impressive anymore. You don't do it in the playoffs. You don't do it in the World Series. And you drop a ball in center field, an easy fly ball. You're not going to get any benefit of the doubt anymore. Juan Soto has a championship. Juan Soto basically single-handedly got the Yankees to the World Series along with Giancarlo Stanton, right? Though it wasn't even their best players that got it done. It's crazy to me, right? Look, the number is always going to scare you. But when a guy's 26 years old, it's hard to say that money is going to – see, this is not the situation where Cohen is going to spend $600 million on Juan Soto, and if it doesn't pan out, not spend anymore. He's not going to do that. It's not Juan Soto offseason, and then the Mets are not going to make any more moves. They're going to make more moves. You got to remember the fact that this has been talked about with Juan Soto in 2025 when Cohen took over the team as owner. He brought that up in his opening press conference. He knew 2025 was a big deal. It was talked about in one of his first interviews for a reporter after he took ownership. They brought up that question. He talked about 2025 in the 2020-2021 season. He talked about that offseason. How important it's going to be, how developing a farm system is going to take years, how spending money is key because you're in the same city as the Yankees. He said that. The 2025 is Cohen's year. He's talked about that. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be successful if he spends that money, right? You still got to play the games on the field. But you have to remember, guys, spending money wisely is also important. And if you don't believe Soto is important and spending money wisely that way, I don't know where you're going to go. Like, you can give it to Burns and Santander and Alonso, and it's still pretty good. But the last thing you want is for the Philadelphia Phillies to pop in and say, you know what? Juan Soto could help this team, and now you got to deal with him for the next 12 years. You also have to think of that as well. You can't just think of, oh, well, I can't give $600 million to Juan Soto. But what if he ends up in a team like the NL East? What if the Nationals bring him back? What if the Phillies say, you know what? Let's just spend all this money. We're on the verge here, 3 years in a row, losing in the playoffs, getting worse and worse by year. We need to jump over the top here. What if they do that? Now you got to deal with Juan Soto in your division once again for the next 12 to 13 years. Right? You also got to remember that. I'd rather have him on my team facing the NL East than facing him for another 10 to 12 years.
I think the thing is you cannot let fear be a deterrent for a free agent, for a contract. Otherwise, you're never going to be a successful organization. And you have to take risks. Sometimes you win them or you lose them. I mean, example, Verlander and Scherzer. Say what you want about what we got in return, but
that was a risk.
It was a risk, and it was a loss. But you know what? There's been plenty other risks where they have panned out. I mean, you could argue Francisco Lindor. I mean, it was hard to see at first, right? And then it kind of opened up. Cole's to win a World Series. At this rate, I'm willing to take the risk to win the World Series. The Dodgers did it, right? Cohen and all the Mets say, East Coast Dodgers, East Coast Dodgers. Well, that's what the Dodgers do. We're not giving money to 37-year-olds. We're giving money to a 26-year-old.
Correct.
I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do that.
Exactly.
If we were sitting here and saying, oh, it was going to be Scherzer and Verlander and Burns, pitching is a little outrageous. But for a 26-year-old, once-in-a-lifetime generational talent, I'm willing to do that.
Yes, exactly. Right? Do you think the Yankees still are kicking themselves in the foot for not trying to go after Bryce Harper? Because they talked about their other guys in the outfield when Harper was a free agent, or even Machado that same year, and they didn't get it, and they're still trying to find outfielders other than Aaron Judge, right? Sometimes that loss could be big. Remember that, right? You don't want to lose out on a guy that's a generational talent. Not saying you're going to win, but it helps a little bit. So last but not least, let's finish this stream up by talking about a little bit of news of John Morosi talking to MLB Network that the Pirates might be going after Pete Alonso this offseason. Now, we heard about all the teams, the Cubs, obviously the Mets, the Yankees who need a first baseman, maybe even other teams that we're not listening, that we're not hearing. Hayden, I'm going to start with you. Pittsburgh Pirates, the forgotten team in Pittsburgh, might be going after Pete Alonso. What are your thoughts about that?
That'd be quite the interesting. That'd be a rare Bob Nutting W right there. That's their owner. I really don't see it. I mean, this was a team that took an arm and a leg to extend Brian Reynolds, and I mean, I think that's all that really needs to be said. They're a young team; they got talent. If you're a high spender and willing to spend, GM or president of operations or owner in Pittsburgh, I mean, it'd be probably a pretty solid addition to bring him back, to bring him into Pittsburgh. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not. Like I said, I mean, there's going to be plenty of teams that are interested in Alonso. I mean, 2 years ago, the Rockies were interested in Brandon Nimmo. I mean, it's, like I said, teams are going to be interested in Pete. I mean, like Stern said, I mean, it's respectful. It's respectful and makes sense for him to test the market. I don't blame him. I think he can get a little cocky, and Boris, being his representative, could definitely come back to hurt him down the line, which we've seen the last couple seasons, especially with Boris's pitching guys and Montgomery and Snell. But when it comes to Pete, he's hopefully a guy that the Mets will bring back for the right price. We've talked about it on here for probably a year and a half. We discussed how first base contracts typically don't work out long term. We discussed how, is Pete Alonso Mr. Small Leverage, high leverage? We talked about the statistics all season. We discussed, how's Pete Alonso going to age? He's very unathletic. He's a first baseman. He's not a position player. Whatever. Like I said, if Pete doesn't come back to the Mets, I'd be upset. Yeah, but I think it would probably be to a team like the Cubs or the Astros or one of those teams that are more willing to spend. I don't see the Pirates kind of in that type of spending mentality. So yeah, like I said, teams are going to be interested. It makes sense. I mean, we'll probably, every team is going to have interest.
Yeah, and I think it's the quickest team, the 200 million. I think Pete Alonso is looking for 200 million, and I think there's going to be a desperate team out there like the Cubs, and maybe the Pirates surprise everybody, right? But I think it's going to be Alonso first team, the 200 million. He's going to take it. Chris, what are your thoughts? Pirates, Alonso?
He's not going to Pittsburgh, man. Come on. I don't know what JP Morosi is doing. If this is his follow-up act after last season when he said Shohei was on the private jet to Toronto and everybody, kind of stopped listening to what he had to say, then this is not a good follow-up act. He's got to do better than that. Listen, Pete Alonso and his comments about wanting to be a New York Met for life, right? I believe him. I really do. And I think a little bit was over the top, right? There was some just answers that you kind of want to hear and it makes you feel good as a Mets fan, right? And I think he has some standards in terms of wanting to go to an organization that has been successful, is willing to pay money, or has a combination of one of those two accolades, right? Pittsburgh's really not that, right? And that's kind of their own doing as well. Yes, they're at a disadvantage being a small market, but they fielded some pretty good teams, right, in seasons past, right, going back on a decade plus ago, and they just simply aren't willing to dish out that kind of money. So the odds are very, very slim, and I don't see Pete Alonso going there because, again, right, even if he doesn't 100% mean what he says and wanting to be a Met through and through, I still do believe as a ball player he has standards of wanting to win. And I do believe that there are certain teams that have advantages out there, regardless of whether it's small market teams versus big market teams or not. And the Pittsburgh Pirates just simply aren't one of those teams. So again, I can't see, the Pirates being in the fold for Pete. The Yankees, on the other hand, I can see them being in the fold. Anthony Rizzo's contract's up. Especially if they don't get Juan Soto, I could see them making a huge offer for Pete Alonso, more so than anybody else. And I don't think that the Mets are out of the Pete Alonso sweepstakes, even if they do get Juan Soto, contrary to popular belief. But it makes it a little bit more harder to envision, right? There's a world where the Mets can get both done, but it's a little bit harder to envision. Like I said, once the markets set themselves, we'll kind of see how that comes to fruition. But I don't want to sidestep you all in terms of if you have any other topics. I do personally have to get going, though. I'm on a very big time crunch right now.
We're done.
No, Alonso is not going to Pittsburgh. One final thing that I wanted to talk to you all about, or just say in general, is, as always, we appreciate you being here. If you want any more bullpen talk, I released a video just for you all to know what's going on my channel. A couple hours ago, I released a video ahead of free agency talking about team-friendly bullpen targets, free agent targets, right? Not the names that are going to wow you. Rob, we've talked about this countless of times in terms of how David Stearns builds bullpens, not going for the guys that are going to earn 4 or 5 year deals on these mega contracts because it's risky for bullpen arms, but more of the team friendlier contracts. So I gave you all 5 names in that video. Make sure you go check it out. It's on my channel, links in the description down below. But I'm excited to talk free agency with you all, even more so than ever before, right? This is just like the taste of what we're going to be talking about all offseason long regarding Juan Soto, regarding Pete Alonso, etc. It's going to be an absolute pleasure to make these kind of videos with how multitude of moves that are going to come in regarding the New York Mets. So I'm excited. Thank you all for tuning in. Hayden, as always, great to see you back on stream with us. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Rob, I appreciate you as well. And I appreciate everybody in the chat, right? Whether you're in Rob's stream or my stream, we appreciate you all. And until the next episode of the Mets Hot Stove Live and any other pre-recorded episodes that we got going on, make sure you check out Rob's video. He also posted on his channel. With that being said, I'm out. But again, expect it to be a little bit slower to start in terms of free agency. It only began just about an hour ago. It's going to take some time for things to heat up, but we will be with you all with every step of the way. See you all later. I'm out. Peace.
Absolutely, guys. So MLB free agent frenzy started today, about an hour ago. Not only do we have a presidential election tomorrow, we have free agent frenzy today starting, and a little preview going into the political craziness that's going to happen over the next day or two. Make sure you continue to check out the channels, guys. I did a free agent prediction video that showed up before this stream. Check that out. I know there's going to be a lot of people disagree or agree with those. Make sure you do that. But with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to MLB Free Agent Frenzy. We're going to do Free Agent Frenzy once a week, right? When things happen, the show's going to happen. Mets Hot Stove Live is probably going to happen in a day or two, probably on Wednesday, most likely. We've tried to do it around 3 days a week. Again, if there's not a lot of stuff to talk about, there's not going to be there probably ain't going to be a show, but we're trying to do it 2 to 3 days a week, along with MLB Free Agent Frenzy, to get all baseball talk in here. It's been a successful show, guys. Hayden, thank you for tuning in. You can always show up on the next show, or even at Mets Hot Stove Live. If you got time, we will discuss that for sure. Everybody in the chat, thank you for watching. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channels, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night, and always, Met fans, let's go Mets. See you next time, guys. Have a good night.